Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah Macintyre. And today we are exploring what makes a good teacher. I know, I missed one off my little theme that I was doing all that time ago, and it's been really playing around in my mind. So I thought that we would cover this because it's really interesting, and it does tie in actually with that last email from Kate, I think it was Kate, in the last podcast about wanting to develop her mediumship and being in a circle but feeling like she's being denied her mediumship. And this is the first thing that I really want to say about this, is it's so important to make sure that your teacher is covering and meeting your needs of what you want. And I know I've mentioned this in the last podcast, but we do have a tendency to be terribly passive with our mediumship. Like the spirit world are going to organise it all for us and we just get to rock up. And actually, it's really, 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 really important to think about what you want. So don't go to a spirit guide workshop if you really want to work on communicating evidentially. Don't go to a circle week in, week out if it's focused on reading tarot cards and what you really want to do is healing, because then you're just punishing yourself, but also you're going to get frustrated with your teacher. Now, my first teacher that I worked with, Jill, was an amazing teacher, and I was so lucky to have her. But it was also a very interesting thing, because even though I know that she's a great evidential medium, we just never did it in the circle. And I was with her for a few years, never happened, never came up. And it was one of the things that really sort of held me back from what I wanted from my development, because I was sitting there going, maybe this week we'll do it. And I never asked and I never said, and then we wouldn't. And then I'd go, well, maybe next week we'll do it. And then we wouldn't. And that wasn't Jill's fault. That was partly or mostly on me. I never asked, I never said, I didn't communicate what I wanted from it. But also, I probably should have taken the leap and gone for other courses. There's something, isn't there, but you just feel like you get stuck sometimes and you stick yourself to your teacher, and that's not really fair on them. So the first thing that I would say is be very, very clear about what it is that you're wanting to develop, what it is that you want to learn. If you're signing up for my course in September to do evidential mediumship, don't expect it to cover healing. Don't expect it to cover spirit guides. It won't. It's about evidential mediumship. And being clear about that. And I think sometimes in spiritual circles, or I don't even mean circles, I mean spiritual people, there's a tendency to sort of be fluffy. And so if you need that clarity, don't be afraid to ask for it. Now, one of the biggest things for me about getting a good teacher is being able to see them do it. And this is really important. I think if you are going to learn evidential mediumship with a teacher, then you should be able to watch them work. They should be, if they're teaching online, they should be demonstrating online too. They shouldn't be expecting you to travel. Now, if they're only demonstrating in person, then they should be teaching in person. That's my view. I know that's not everybody's going to agree with it. But if you're going to set yourself up as an expert and say, this is what I'm going to teach you, your students should have an opportunity to be able to see you do it. And if they're not going to see you do it, then there's something we've got to ask here. This is the kind of ilk when you get life coaches that still live at home, or life coaches or social media gurus with 200 followers. And they say, well, it's not, my focus isn't on my following, my focus is on developing yours. And you go, well, And there's a difference with the life coach, of course, that wants to be at home beside one that's trapped, if you know what I mean, working in your parents' basement going, oh, but what you want, if you want to manifest yourself a BMW, you can manifest yourself a BMW. I completely believe in wealth, but they're not having any of their own. Meh. And it's the same for mediumship. If you can't see your teacher stepping up and doing the work, then there's something weird there, isn't there? Especially, I think, because mediumship changes, and at the moment we're in this rapidly evolving space for mediumship. And if they're not actually doing the work, then how are they developing? They're going to be teaching you the same stuff that they were teaching you 5 years ago. You can't teach and give up on doing the readings. You have to have that balance, I believe. So I think that is really, really, really important. I think that you've got to make sure that your teacher wants you to develop as much as you want to develop. I have worked with teachers who have gone off me when they found out how many followers I've got. Like, you can literally tell. They friend requested me on Facebook, and then because of that they have seen my page, and then they're completely different to me after that. But also I think there's this kind of wanting to give everything you know freely that you want your teacher to be in. So sometimes when I'm working with my students, I will say to them, I learnt this today. I learnt this yesterday. You guys know, if you listen to this podcast, I always try and share everything I get as I get it. But there are teachers that won't. And Spirit always sing me that Magic Penny song, love is something if you give it away. Yeah, I know I've sung it to you before. You're welcome. You got it again. But there is this sometimes limiting experience you can have with teachers where they won't tell you everything they know because they don't want you to be as good as they are, and that is a problem. You know, my absolute dream would be for my students to get to the same level as me and be doing the work with me, and then we could do collaborative events. I'd love that. But for a lot of people that's too much. And I understand that it's very difficult, but you have to find a teacher that's in that space. And if you're feeling like they perhaps don't want you to succeed, they might not want you to succeed. Now, I know I mentioned that a lady that I had on that course, the American lady, who said to me, did you say you do this for a living? How's that working for you then? It was a real moment for me when the teacher came into the Zoom room, and I said, I'm really struggling here. She's saying no to everything. And that teacher saying, well, she's a great sitter, so if she's saying no, that means you're making it up. And me feeling completely crushed by that, completely crushed. No help. No, here's what you need to do. Let me link in with you. Let me see how we can retrieve this. Just a complete put down. And that happened after they could see how many followers I had. So we can't dress it up any other way, can we? That was a real, I'm going to take you down a peg or two. But actually, I really was there because I wanted to learn, and I really wanted to be helped, and I really wanted to be a great medium. And it was heartbreaking to me. The other thing is that sometimes you get mediumistic teachers that just love to talk. They should set up a podcast, guys. I'm never going to judge anyone for wanting to talk. And there is a balance between relatable stories that have relevancy in the teaching session and boring the frickin' pants off your students. And I think that some teachers find it hard to tread that line. So on my podcast, you guys aren't paying for this podcast. You get to listen, you get to fast forward it. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk and when I want to talk about it. But in a teaching environment, hopefully, I managed to keep that urge within myself muted somewhat. And that's really, really important. I have done courses where like at Arthur Findlay College, where you get an hour and a half session and 50 minutes of the session has been the teacher telling a story about something that made them look great in their mediumship. And you're just sitting there going, oh my God, I just want to work. And I think a good teacher can find the balance between relatable stories that have relevancy and making sure there's enough time for you to crack on and have the experience you need to have. Because in my opinion, even though there are keys and things you can learn that improve your mediumship, the only way you develop the way that you should is by doing it. It's the only way. and learning as you go, and having your teacher there to answer questions and queries, but not to listen to somebody else's story. It's not story time with the teacher around the fire. It is work time. That's what you've paid for. So I think that's really, really important. I think that part of being a really good teacher is to open people's minds and have an open mind yourself. So I learn as much from my students as they learn from me, and I think that's a wonderful space to be in. And sometimes you do get people who come to you with very limited beliefs or very closed minds. It has to be done this way, it has to be done that way. And I have to say, it's fun because you watch them push through their own limitations, and it's almost like a kid on a bike going, I can do it, look at me, I'm doing it, and you go, yeah, I knew you could, and they're going, oh my god, I can do it, and it's just got this really lovely, exciting feeling. So it's important as a teacher to have an open mind, and it's important as a student to try and be as open as possible, but to be willing for your teacher to open you up also. And I think one of the things I've learned with all the teaching that I've done is that sometimes the people that are the most vulnerable and the most in need can sometimes phrase questions in a slightly aggressive / judgmental tone. And it's important to be able to hold that space for them and not take it personally, and to be like, okay, is this what you mean? Is that what you mean? And understand that they're going through a process. Their fears coming out, their anxieties coming out, their self-doubt is coming out. You can't judge them for how they ask you a question if it triggers your self-doubt and your anxiety and your imposter syndrome. You have to be able to hold that space. That said, while we're talking about difficult students, there are always difficult students. There are always students that don't listen, don't do as you've asked. One of my biggest ones is students that talk too much and don't listen when you say, don't tell them anything, and then they go, oh yeah, but this happened and that happened, and then I was doing this, and then I was doing, and you're like, I'm trying to hold a connection here, and you are, so especially when you're learning, it can be really hard when you get difficult sitters. And I think that this is important though. If you only have comfy, good people that hold a nice space for you, you're never going to develop those skills to be able to learn to manage the ones that are harder. So when you go out in the real world with real sitters and real stuff happening, you won't be able to do it. So as a teacher, it's managing that. It's being clear on what your expectations are, but also understanding that some people just won't listen. They just won't. And they're going to do their own thing, but trusting that there is an experience there that everybody needs to learn from. I think it's really important as a teacher to push your students, not too hard, but definitely give them a shove. And this is important. I think mediumship, as you've heard me say, is vulnerability. You are not going to learn what you need to learn in your comfort zone. If you have a teacher that enables you to stay in your comfort zone, that is a problem. So you're never going to develop again. And one of the things that I found really hard when I've done mentorship with certain teachers is that you are reading for them every week the same thing again and again and again, and actually it'd be really nice if they brought in some guest students for you. That's one of the things I've written into my mentorship program, is that you will work with other people, and I'll still be there for it and be able to give you that feedback and that information, but I think sometimes it can get very samey and very hard to work in. So you want a teacher that believes in you more than you believe in yourself, that absolutely encourages you with a firmness to have a go, but then when you do it, will support you through it and celebrate the wins with you and guide you through the losses. That's what I think you really want. So you don't want a teacher that says, okay, you've done one course, now go forth and demonstrate, because that's too much. But you do want a teacher that hears you when you say, I'm a bit tired, and tries to push you past that and makes you do it. And the responsibility, I say, in that is always equal. If you've got a student that rocks up that says, I can't do it, I'm too tired, I always say, well, try, sit in it, see how you feel, but I understand if you don't want to, because I don't want to push anyone to the point of breaking. But equally, it's that balance, isn't it? You've got to push yourself and I've got to push you too. And then you'll be able to see what you're capable of and what you're able to do. Now, I think personalised feedback is absolutely crucial to the mediumship development journey. Equally, if you're booking a course where you know that there's 30 people on it, you're not going to get individual personalised feedback. So you've got to think about what it is that you want. Do you want a space just to practice your skills and learn some different approaches, that kind of thing? Or do you want individualised mentoring? Because then you want mentorship and not a workshop, and you have to find that space or that balance. Maybe you want both. But that's really, really important. And one of the things that I always try to do, even though it's really sticky and difficult and awkward, is give truthful feedback. I don't think anybody grows the way that they should if you mollycoddle them. And that's not what you are paying me for if I'm teaching you. There was a lady that I met once on a course. In fact, I met her several times. And she has been working with the spirit world for decades. And I mean decades. But nearly always staying in the student role and not in the medium role. She sometimes does some demonstrations, but generally speaking, she's an eternal student. And one of the things that I noticed is she's been coming on courses. She's now being taught by people who she was on courses with. And she's permanently being held in this cycle. And I think that part of that cycle is the energy exchange is completely off. So rather than saying to her, enough with the flapping, get on with it. So she gets on stage and she goes, oh, I don't know if I could do this. Oh, I'm going to try and do this, but I don't know if I could do this. I shouldn't have said that, but I said this, but I don't know if I should do this. Oh, I can't do this. And she's flushed and she's sweaty and she's panicky and she's wittering. And I sit there and I think what that teacher needs to do is, with love, but with love, say to her, you can do this. Now, next time you do it, I don't want to hear any of that stuff that's audible, bringing down of your vibration. I want you to step up as if you're really, really confident. That's my challenge for you. And what this lady ended up with was all the students going to her, oh, you did so well. Well done. Oh, that was so good. And it wasn't good. It wasn't good because she was wittering and panicky. And honestly, if you are 35 years into your development journey, somebody should say to you, you could be so much better if you just didn't let your mouth run away with you. And we've got to look at where the teachers are in that, who are paid to provide that service. So if you ever book with me, I am direct. Can you tell? But I also think it helps people to become the mediums that they can be, rather than just wishy-washy. And so personalised feedback is important, and it is the balance between holding that space of love for people to grow, which I do manage to do as well, guys. I'm not just completely mean, but also being honest and truthful. And it's something as a student you learn, is that actually people saying to you, yeah, that was brilliant, that was really, really good, and yes to everything doesn't help you develop. And it's only when you find out later that they said yes to that, but it was really a no, and they'd interpreted that for you because you'd said they lived in a flat, but actually it was a very small house, and they'd said yes to that because they knew that where you'd got that wrong. It actually didn't help you learn. It didn't help you experience your mediumship properly. It didn't help you grow because you thought it was a yes. So you let it go. So there's definitely something to be said for personalised feedback, but truthful feedback. And that goes across the board, students and teachers. But there is nothing like working in front of a teacher and a teacher telling you what you got wrong and what you got right, and where there was more for you to expand on and what you need to do. There's nothing that beats that. And you have to be looking at whether you're getting that from your teacher, because that is how you will grow. I once heard a teacher say in a lesson that well, actually, this was a very judgmental teacher, and this is an interesting thing. So, I'm full of opinion about mediumship and stuff like that. But they used to start every lesson with, I saw someone doing this online. It was absolutely shocking. I went to a church the other day and this was absolutely rubbish. And it was just such a horrible, judgmental energy. I was so full of all their disgust and things that I shouldn't be doing when I work, that when it came to actual time to work, I felt a bit sort of panicked and out of sorts. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be doing this. It's not a great frequency to be in. And that teacher also said they don't like doing readings with grandparents because they're boring and it's always the same old, same old. And that really stuck with me because at that point, I only had grandparents in the spirit world. And I just thought, but I really want to hear from my grandparents. You can't tell me that's not valid. That's who I want to hear from. And whilst I agree, you don't want to go to a demonstration where somebody is doing grandparent after grandparent after grandparent after grandparent. You do want them to be accessible. For some of us, that's all we have. And that doesn't mean that our need is any less valid. So again, there's the being truthful and being real and sharing real experiences and relatable stories, but not being judgmental and not being too hard with it. And that, I think, is the sign of a really, really good teacher. A really good teacher will make you feel comfortable with getting it wrong. And I say this to my students all the time. You are not here to get it right. If you come into a learning group and you get every single thing right, then you're not learning. You're not pushing your boundaries of your mediumship. You're not making the mistakes you need to make mistakes. See, there we go. You're not making the mistakes you need to make to be able to learn from. And I think it's really important to have a teacher that allows you to get it wrong, to get it right. And that's so important. And often in our groups, and hopefully in the groups that you learn in too, you will find that people will talk about something that's not gone right in their reading, and then there'll be a lesson or a learning in it for everybody in the group. So if you can hold a space where people are allowed that vulnerability to express, I messed this up, or this didn't go the way I wanted, or that wasn't what I wanted, it just makes such a difference for everybody who's there. So that for me is an absolutely massive thing. You have to give your students space to get it wrong. You have to chuck them in at the deep end and go, you've got this, and watch them swim. And sometimes you'll need to chuck them in a life buoy, and sometimes you won't. But that's how it should be. So I think that I've covered everything that I think is really important if you're on that search for a teacher and you're looking for it, because I think it's important to talk about, because I know that whenever I wasn't getting what I wanted from a teacher, I had a tendency to sort of internalize it and go, oh, well, that's my fault that I've got that wrong. I should have learnt more. I should have done this. And it's very, very hard to get to the point where you go, actually, I accept that is the wrong teacher for me. And you can understand that. I think a good teacher will teach you to push yourself and not bypass. And they will get you to practice, and they will hold that space for you. And that is really, 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 really important. And while we're on this subject of teaching and stuff like that, I've just got to ask her a bit of a question here that I've got written down, which is, can you actually be a certified medium? I keep hearing people talk about certified mediums, and what does that mean? And from what I can actually see that means is that you've done a course and someone's given you a certificate, which actually is kind of meaningless unless it's, a proper bona fide qualification with one of the big spiritual bodies, which I haven't got because I cannot jump through the churchy hoops. I'm just not that girl. But unless it's that, I mean, really, it doesn't teach you anything, and it seems weird to me that you would need to write that in your write-up. But there you go. I don't offer certificates for my courses unless they're Reiki. Feedback, Do you think I should start saying certified course? Because it doesn't prove anything. I don't know. It's a funny old world we live in, isn't it? Funny. So that's all of that. I'm just having a quick look and see if there's anything that I can add to this. If you're thinking of taking the leap into teaching your students, again, I think this is worth reminding you that there will be an energetic shift for you, and it is learning to spin the plates of helping your students to develop and keeping your eye on your own development also. And as I said at the beginning, I think that's really important. If you're not doing the work, you're not developing in the work, you're not sitting in the shifts of it. So you should be doing the work, yes, and your students should be able to see you doing the work. I know one of my friends was learning with a mediumship teacher who would do the thing that they had set them, the work that they had set them at the start of the lesson, to show them a example of it. Now, I don't do that every time, I do it on occasion, but it's things like that to think about. Being, are they as confident in their mediumship? I also heard a story, and I don't know which medium it was, but if it was you and you're listening, please come on my show so I can interview you. But they were told by a teacher to get a phone number, and they said to the teacher, well, you do it first and you show us. And they said, what? And he said, well, you want me to get a phone number, I want you to show me that you can get a phone number. And they couldn't do it. And I think there is a little bit of that sometimes in mediumship teaching, which is that I'm going to set you a really impossible task that I couldn't even do, and then when you fail, you'll book another course with me because you haven't learned everything you need to learn. And this is the problem. If you have got, it's the same in healing, but teaching is definitely one of them. If you are teaching your students everything that you know, then there is a limit to how long they're going to work with you for. But that is also quite right, and how it should be. And I think part of the problem is the teachers that come from a space of lack and are constantly trying to keep you in that funnel. I did a course with a teacher once where they told us all this stuff they were going to teach us, and then it got to the end of the 3 months and they said, okay, well, we're going to start level 2 of this course and I'm going to teach you this, this and this and this, same stuff from level 1. And we got through the end of level 2 and they said, I still haven't taught you that stuff. I said, I taught you, but if you sign up for level 3, I definitely will, at which point I was gone. And so there's that kind of thing that happens as well. I'm going to hold this back. I'm going to keep dangling this carrot of things that I know. I mean, if I teach you this one thing that I learned, it's going to completely change your mediumship. It's going to completely change. It's going to be amazing. But I'll do it at the end of this course. Oh, but I'll do it later. Oh, but I'll do it later. Oh, but I'll do it later. Will you though? Because I don't believe that you will. And so that's also, I think, a really important thing. But the main thing always is to trust your instinct. And of course, don't take it on your first day, because you are going to go in on your first day and be nervous and be scared and be afraid. But if you're sitting there and it's months in and you're thinking, this isn't working for me the way that I wanted it to, but I've signed up now and I can't escape, just do yourself a favour and step back, because I am so bad at that. And sometimes because I've got to carry on because I've paid for this course, and actually the course has ended up damaging me and damaging my confidence in my abilities. So the best thing that I believe you can do in that scenario is set yourself free and step back, and then open up a space for the right teacher for you. Your teacher should also, I'm just going to finish on this one, be interested. And I have done courses and been on workshops with teachers that have left the room as soon as all the students start working, that have checked their phone and been on their phone when all the students have been working. I've even had a teacher fall asleep after lunch when we were all working. And that to me is a teacher that has checked out. They're not interested, because I can tell you this, and all the teachers listening will know this. You can walk around the room. There's always someone that needs a little bit of help, a little bit of support. You can listen to what's happening. Often when I walk around the room, I will hear things happening and I'll write notes of things that I need to address with the whole group so everybody can learn. Again, that collaborative experience. So you want a teacher that is present, that is engaged, that believes in you, that will give you enough space to get it wrong so you can get it right, that will show you how to do a good job and will help you to be the best medium that you can be. And if you haven't got that, you need to look again. I hope this helps. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.